The Appalachian Mountains, a spine of ancient rock stretching over 2,000 miles from Alabama to Maine. These mountains are older than bones, older than most life on Earth. 480 million years they have stood, watching, waiting. For centuries, people have entered these forests and never returned. Children vanish in broad daylight. Experienced hikers disappear from familiar trails. Hunters who know every tree, every stream, every rock, simply cease to exist. Strange lights appear over mountain ridges with no explanation. Creatures are sighted that should not exist. Entire families are tormented by forces that defy understanding. The Appalachian Mountains hold secrets buried deep in shadow. Tonight, we explore 25 of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries from these ancient hills. 25 cases that remain unexplained to this very day. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and let the darkness of the mountains carry you into the unknown. Case number 1. The disappearance of Dennis Martin. June 14th, 1969. Father's Day weekend in the Great Smoky Mountains. 6-year-old Dennis Martin was 5 days away from his 7th birthday. His family had taken him on his first overnight camping trip, a special occasion for a special boy. 3 generations of the Martin family had hiked 10 miles to Spence Field, a 200-acre meadow sitting nearly 5,000 feet above sea level on the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Dennis was with his father William, his 9-year-old brother Douglas, and his grandfather Clyde. The weather was perfect. The family was together. Everything was as it should be. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the children decided to play a game. They would sneak around and surprise the adults. A simple game of hide and seek, harmless fun. But Dennis was wearing a bright red shirt. It would give him away. So the older children told him he would need to circle around the far side of the field where the thick rhododendron bushes would hide his red shirt. William Martin, Dennis's father, watched his son walk toward the tree line. The red shirt made Dennis easy to track as he picked his way through the mountain laurel. William could see him clearly. 5 minutes passed. The other children jumped out and surprised the adults. Everyone laughed, but Dennis never appeared. William called his son's name. No answer. He called again, louder. Still nothing. Dennis was an obedient child. He always came when called. He was not the type to wander off or hide when he heard concern in his father's voice. The families began searching, calling Dennis's name. By 6 in the evening, they knew something was terribly wrong. What followed was one of the largest search operations in National Park Service history. Over 1,400 volunteers scoured 56 square miles of wilderness. FBI agents opened case files. Green Berets, fresh from Vietnam, joined the hunt. The search lasted 16 days. They found child-sized footprints in the mud near Eagle Creek, several miles away. One foot was bare. The other showed the pattern of a boy's Oxford shoe, size 2.5. Exactly what Dennis had been wearing. The tracks led toward water and then simply stopped. But here is what makes this case truly disturbing. 7 miles away from Spencefield, at a place called Sea Branch, a man named Harold Key was having a picnic with his family. Between 6 and 6:45 that evening, Harold heard a scream he later described as enormous, sickening, and fundamentally wrong. It was not the cry of any animal he knew, not a human in distress, something else entirely. Minutes after that otherworldly scream, Harold and his family saw something emerge from the woods, a man moving fast through the undergrowth. But this was no ordinary hiker. This man was unkempt, hair past his shoulders, torn and dirty clothes. He looked like he had been living rough in the mountains for months. And over his shoulder, he carried something that looked like cloth or clothing. The moment this strange man spotted the Key family watching him, he immediately changed course and plunged deeper into the forest, disappearing completely. Could a 6-year-old child cover 7 miles of wilderness on his own? It seems impossible. But could something have carried him? Dennis Martin was never found. No trace of his clothing was ever discovered. No remains were ever recovered. He simply ceased to exist at 4:30 in the afternoon on June 14th, 1969. To this day, the case remains open and unsolved. Case number 2. The Bennington Triangle and the disappearance of Paula Weldon. December 1st, 1946. Exactly 3 years before another triangle victim would vanish, Paula Jean Weldon was an 18-year-old college student. Brilliant, athletic, independent. She was studying art at Bennington College in Vermont. On that December afternoon, Paula wanted to go hiking. She tried to recruit other students, but they were busy studying for exams. Paula decided to go alone. At around 2:45, she changed into a distinctive outfit, a bright red parka with a fur collar, jeans, and lightweight sneakers. An outfit that would prove tragically inadequate for a December night in Vermont. Paula hitched a ride to the Long Trail entrance. At 4 in the afternoon, the same fateful hour when so many would vanish in this region, she asked a newspaper watchman for directions. He later recalled that she appeared cheerful, in good spirits. This was the last confirmed sighting of Paula Jean Weldon. When Paula failed to return to her dormitory that evening, it triggered a response unlike anything Vermont had ever seen. Bennington College closed entirely. Students, faculty, and staff joined a massive search. Hundreds of volunteers, military aircraft, professional trackers, bloodhounds. They searched for weeks. The case made national news. A $5,000 reward was offered, equivalent to $60,000 today. Paula's father, a prominent industrial engineer, publicly criticized Vermont's law enforcement. The state had no professional police force at the time. The search found nothing. No red jacket, no personal belongings, no sign of struggle, no evidence that Paula had ever walked that trail. Paula's disappearance was so shocking that it led to the creation of the Vermont State Police in 1947. Her case changed law enforcement history, but it did not bring her back. Paula Jean Weldon was never found. The girl in the red jacket vanished into the mountains and never returned. Case number 3. The vanishing of Middie Rivers. 13 months before Paula Weldon disappeared, another impossible vanishing occurred. November 12th, 1945. Middie Rivers was 74 years old, but he was no ordinary elderly man. Middie was a professional hunting guide. He had spent decades leading parties through the wilderness of southwestern Vermont. He knew every trail, every stream, every landmark within 50 miles of Bennington. Those who knew him described him as methodical, cautious, and utterly incapable of getting lost. The mountains were his home. He had mastered their secrets. On that November afternoon, Middie was leading a hunting party of 4 men, including his own son-in-law. They were in the Bigfoot Hollow area, also known locally as Hell Hollow Brook, about 4 miles from Bennington, near the base of Glastonbury Mountain. At around 4 in the afternoon, Middie moved ahead of the other hunters, a routine decision. Guides often scout ahead to identify the best routes. He told the others he would meet them at a predetermined location further up the trail, and then he walked into the forest and simply ceased to exist. When Middie failed to appear at the meeting point, the other hunters grew concerned. They searched until darkness made further efforts impossible. They found nothing. What followed was the largest civilian search mobilization in Vermont history. At that time, hundreds of volunteers, soldiers from Fort Devens, conducted systematic grid searches. They found almost nothing, a single rifle cartridge near a creek. Later, a hiker found Middie's handkerchief, but no tracks, no broken branches, no clothing scraps caught on thorns, no signs of struggle, no blood. The man who knew every inch of these woods had vanished without leaving a single trace, as if he had stepped out of reality itself. Middie Rivers was never found. His disappearance remains unsolved. Case number 4. James Tedford, the man who vanished from a moving bus. December 1st, 1949. Exactly 3 years to the day after Paula Weldon disappeared. James Tedford was 68 years old, a World War I veteran, living at the Vermont Soldiers' Home in Bennington. On that December afternoon, James had been visiting relatives in St. Albans, about 90 miles north of Bennington. His family accompanied him to the bus station. They watched him board the southbound bus. They watched the bus depart. At 6:15, the bus made a scheduled stop in Burlington. An acquaintance had a brief conversation with Tedford at the depot. This was the final confirmed sighting. Tedford reboarded the bus for the continuing journey to Bennington. The route was straightforward. 14 scheduled stops over approximately 2 hours of travel. No wilderness detours. No opportunities for someone to wander off. But somewhere between Burlington and Bennington, James Tedford ceased to exist. When the bus arrived at its final destination, Tedford's seat was empty, but his personal belongings remained undisturbed. His clothes, a small suitcase, other personal effects, all suggesting their owner had simply stepped away for a brief moment. Most disturbing was the open bus timetable found on his seat, as if he had been studying the schedule moments before his disappearance. His unclaimed ticket stub was still there. The bus driver claimed a passenger resembling Tedford had exited in Brandon, about 70 miles north of Bennington. He said the man had been acting strangely, but when other passengers were interviewed weeks later, none recalled seeing Tedford exit the bus. James Tedford was not reported missing until December 8th, a full week later. How does a resident of a veteran's home go unnoticed for 7 days? No systematic physical search was ever conducted along the bus route. The investigation relied entirely on witness statements. James Tedford vanished and was never found. How a man disappears from a moving bus filled with other passengers remains a mystery. Case number 5. 8-year-old Paul Gibson. October 12th, 1950. Just 10 months after James Tedford vanished from that bus, Paul Gibson was 8 years old. His family operated a pig farm 3 miles from Bennington Center. They ran the municipal dump, feeding restaurant scraps to their herd. Paul was what would today be recognized as a special needs child, curious and prone to wandering. He required constant supervision. On the afternoon of October 12th, Paul's mother drove with him to the dump for routine feeding. At approximately 3 in the afternoon, she parked her pickup truck near the dump entrance. She left Paul in the truck while she fed the pigs. The task typically took 30 to 40 minutes. Paul was accustomed to waiting in the truck during these brief trips. The weather was perfect, clear autumn day, good visibility, moderate temperatures. At 4 in the afternoon, that fateful hour once again, Paul's mother returned to the truck. The truck was empty. Paul had vanished without witness or sound. She immediately searched the area, calling his name, checking obvious hiding places. Nothing. She alerted the authorities. What followed would produce the most physical evidence of any Bennington Triangle case. but also the most disturbing mystery. Bloodhounds were brought to the scene. They immediately picked up Paul's scent from the truck. They began following a clear trail through the dump area. Their handlers later described it as one of the strongest, most obvious scent paths they had ever encountered. The trail led directly through the dump operation toward a nearby road intersection. The Bloodhounds followed with complete confidence. And then, at the highway intersection, the scent trail simply ended. Not confused by competing odors, not disrupted by challenging terrain. It just stopped, completely, instantly, inexplicably gone. Scent trails can fade. They can be confused by environmental factors, but they do not just disappear at a specific geographic point, as if someone drew an invisible line in the air. Police theorized that Paul had been picked up by a passing vehicle, but there were no tire tracks indicating a vehicle had stopped. No witnesses reported seeing a child. No drivers contacted authorities. The search expanded. Volunteers searched on foot. Aircraft conducted aerial reconnaissance. They found nothing. No clothing scraps, no footprints, no personal items. Paul Gibson, 8 years old, walked from a truck to a road intersection and then ceased to exist. He was never found. Case number 6. Frieda Langer, the only Bennington Triangle victim whose body was ever recovered. October 28th, 1950, just 16 days after Paul Jepson vanished. Frieda Langer was 53 years old, an experienced outdoors woman from North Adams, Massachusetts. She knew the Somerset Reservoir area intimately. The Langer family maintained a cabin on the shores of the reservoir. They had been making annual camping trips to the area for years. This was their backyard. On that October afternoon, Frieda was camping with her husband Max and their cousin Herbert Elsner. Around 1 in the afternoon, Frieda and Herbert set out for a brief routine hike from their established campsite. During their hike, Frieda slipped and fell into a shallow stream, completely soaking her clothing and shoes. An unfortunate accident, but hardly life-threatening. Frieda told Herbert she would return to camp, less than a mile away, to change into dry clothes. She would catch up with him later. A reasonable decision. The campsite was only a few hundred yards from where the incident occurred. Under normal circumstances, the return trip should have taken 15 minutes, maximum. Herbert waited for Frieda to rejoin him. When she did not appear, he returned to camp to check on her. Frieda had never arrived. This case had every advantage that previous searches had lacked. A known exact starting point, a clear intended destination, optimal weather conditions, immediate family witnesses, soft ground that could preserve tracks perfectly. Massive search efforts found nothing. No tracks beyond the stream where Frieda had fallen. No clothing scraps. No signs that she had passed through the forest between the incident site and the campsite. Then, 7 months later, on May 12th, 1951, a hiker discovered her body near the eastern branch of Deerfield River, approximately 3.5 miles southeast of the original campsite. A completely different direction from her intended route back to camp. The discovery location had been searched during the massive search operation. How was she missed? The official investigation theorized that Frieda had fallen down an embankment into a deep pond where she drowned. The body was flushed out months later by spring flooding. But questions remain. How did an experienced hiker walk 3.5 miles in the wrong direction? Why were there no tracks? How was she not found during the extensive searches? Frieda Langer, the only Bennington Triangle victim ever recovered. But her discovery raised more questions than answers. Case number 7. The death of Carol Herrick, the man who was squeezed to death. November 1943. 2 years before the Bennington Triangle disappearances would begin, Carol Herrick thought he was simply going hunting with his cousin Henry, 10 miles northeast of the abandoned town of Glastonbury. A routine expedition into familiar territory. 3 days later, Henry made a discovery that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He found Carol's body lying in a small clearing, surrounded by something incredibly disturbing. Large footprints, massive impressions in the soft earth that dwarfed any normal animal's track. But the footprints were not the strangest part. It was the way Carol had died. Carol Herrick had been squeezed to death. The coroner's report was clinical in its impossibility. Carol's ribs had been compressed with such tremendous force that they punctured his lungs from the outside. His rifle lay nearby, totally unfired. No bullets had been discharged. Whatever had killed Carol had done so with pure crushing strength. Local wildlife experts were consulted. Their conclusion was unanimous but unsettling. They said it was probably a bear. But bears do not squeeze their victims to death. Bears maul and slash and bite with their powerful jaws. They do not embrace their prey in a death hug that slowly compresses the life out of them. The case was classified as an animal attack, but no one could explain how any animal could crush a man's ribs inward with such force, while leaving no claw marks, no bite wounds, no signs of a normal predatory attack, and those enormous footprints surrounding the body. What made them? Carol Herrick's death remains unexplained, a precursor to the impossible events that would follow in the Bennington Triangle. Case number 8. The disappearance of Trenny Gibson. October 8th, 1976. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Trenny Lynn Gibson was 16 years old, a high school student from Knoxville, Tennessee. She was on a school trip with about 40 other students to Clingman's Dome. Clingman's Dome is the highest point in the Great Smoky Mountains at 6,643 feet. It offers spectacular views. It is also one of the most visited locations in the park. On that October afternoon, the group was hiking along a well-maintained trail. Teachers and chaperones were present. The trail was clearly marked, heavily traveled. At some point during the hike, Trenny separated from the group. She was seen talking to a boy at the back of the line, and then she was gone. When the group reached their destination and conducted a head count, Trenny was missing. No one had seen her leave the trail. No one had heard anything unusual. An immediate search was launched. Park rangers, volunteers, rescue teams. They searched for weeks. The area where Trenny disappeared is dense with rhododendron and laurel thickets, the same type of vegetation where Dennis Martin vanished 7 years earlier, just 30 miles away. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs tracked every possible route. Searchers covered every inch of terrain. They found nothing. No clothing, no personal items, no sign that Trenny had ever left the trail. A 16-year-old girl, surrounded by 40 classmates, on a well-marked trail in one of the most visited areas of the park, vanished without a trace. Some theorized she ran away, but Trenny had no history of running away. She had made no secret plans, taken no extra money, told no one of any intention to leave. Others suggested she fell into a ravine, but extensive searches found no body, no evidence of a fall. Trenny Gibson disappeared from a crowded trail, in broad daylight, and was never seen again. Case number 9. The Beast of Bladenboro. January 1954. Bladenboro, North Carolina. A small town of 800 people. Something started killing animals around the town, but it was not killing them in a way that normal predators might kill. It was draining them of their blood. Police Chief Roy Flores had seen plenty of animal attacks before, but when he examined the dead dogs on New Year's Eve in 1953, he knew something was wrong. There were no defensive wounds, no scattered fur from a struggle. The animals looked like they had been emptied, drained of their blood. The autopsy confirmed it. There were not more than 2 or 3 drops of blood in them. The wounds on each animal were basically identical. Surgical precision. Jawbone smashed. Bottom lip split. Something was methodically and systematically draining the life out of these animals. Over 13 days in January, the killings continued. On January 1st, Johnny Vow discovered the method. He said, "My dogs put up a good fight. There was blood all over the porch, big puddles of it, and there was a pool of saliva. It killed one dog at 10:30 and left it lying there. And it came back and killed the other dog and took it off." On January 3rd, Police Chief Flores brought his trained bloodhounds to track the killer. These dogs were bred to pursue anything. But when they caught the scent of this creature, they immediately recoiled. They refused to follow the trail, whimpering as they backed away. On January 5th, a man named Tater Shaw witnessed something disturbing. He found a goat with its skull crushed flat. He said his head was flat as a fritter. Shaw spread 4 fingers across his palm to show the paw prints, the size of silver dollars. Then, on January 6th, Mrs. C.E. Kinlaw stepped onto her front porch at 7:30 in the evening to hang laundry. 20 feet away in the gathering darkness, the beast was waiting for her. She looked up to see a large cat-like creature moving toward her with deliberate intent. Its eyes reflected the porch light as it sized up this new prey, the first human it had approached. Mrs. Kinlaw screamed and ran inside. Her husband grabbed his shotgun and rushed out, but only found cat-like paw prints bigger than a silver dollar scattered across the yard. Panic spread through Bladenboro. Women locked themselves indoors after sunset. Men bought shotguns and pistols. Then came the sound. Witnesses described the same unearthly cry, like a baby crying, or a woman with a knife stuck in her back. Nearly 1,000 hunters descended on Bladenboro, professional big game hunters who had killed lions in Africa. Nobody succeeded in finding the creature. On January 13th, a bobcat was found in a steel trap 4 miles from town. The mayor hung it from a flagpole with a sign. "This is the beast of Bladenboro." The killing stopped, but questions remain. Could a 20-pound bobcat kill a 90-pound dog and drain it of blood? How did it crush skulls and smash jaws with surgical precision? Why did the tracking dogs, bred for courage, refuse to follow its trail? The beast of Bladenboro was never truly identified. Whatever killed those animals, whatever Mrs. Kinlaw saw in her yard, remains unknown. Case number 10. The Mothman of Point Pleasant. November 1966. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. On November 15th, 2 young couples were driving past an abandoned TNT factory outside the town. What they saw would launch one of the most famous cryptid cases in American history. They described a large creature, winged, humanoid, with glowing red eyes, standing 6 to 7 feet tall. The creature had wings that folded against its back, but it did not flap them like a bird. When it flew, it simply rose into the air. The couples fled in their car, speeding away at over 100 miles per hour. The creature followed them, keeping pace with the vehicle. Over the next 13 months, over 100 people would report seeing the creature. Their descriptions were remarkably consistent. Large, grey or black, winged, humanoid, with those terrifying red eyes. The sightings were accompanied by other strange phenomena. UFO reports increased dramatically. People experienced strange phone calls. Men in black suits appeared, questioning witnesses. warning them to stay silent. Then, on December 15th, 1967, tragedy struck Point Pleasant. The Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed during rush hour traffic. 46 people died. It was the worst bridge disaster in American history at that time. Some claimed they saw the Mothman perched on the bridge the night before the collapse. Others believed the creature had tried to warn them. After the bridge collapse, the Mothman sightings stopped almost completely, as if the creature had fulfilled some terrible purpose. What was the Mothman? Was it an unknown species, a government experiment, a harbinger of doom, or something from another dimension entirely? Over 100 witnesses described the same creature over 13 months. Their accounts remain consistent. The Mothman of Point Pleasant has never been explained. Case number 11. The Flatwoods Monster. September 12th, 1952. Flatwoods, West Virginia. On that evening, several boys were playing football when they saw a bright object cross the sky and land on a nearby hill. The boys, along with a local woman named Kathleen May and her 2 sons, climbed the hill to investigate. They brought a flashlight. What they encountered at the top would traumatize them for life. They first noticed a pulsating ball of fire about the size of a house. Then they smelled a strange mist that burned their eyes and noses. Kathleen May shone her flashlight toward a nearby tree, and there, staring back at them, was something inhuman. The creature stood over 10 feet tall. It had a round red face, surrounded by a pointed hood-shaped head like an ace of spades. Its eyes were large, glowing. Its body appeared to be encased in a dark pleated skirt that extended to the ground. The creature emitted a shrill hissing sound. It began gliding toward them, not walking, but floating. The group fled in terror. Several of them became ill afterward, experiencing nausea, vomiting, and throat irritation for days. Local law enforcement investigated the site the next morning. They found skid marks in the grass and a strange oil-like substance that carried an unusual odor. Skeptics have suggested the creature was a barn owl perched on a tree branch, but witnesses maintained their account for the rest of their lives. Multiple people saw the same thing. The pulsating ball of fire, the strange mist that made them sick, the oil-like substance. These details have never been satisfactorily explained. The Flatwoods Monster remains one of West Virginia's most famous unexplained encounters. Case number 12. The Brown Mountain Lights. For over a century, mysterious lights have appeared above Brown Mountain in North Carolina, defying every attempt at explanation. The lights were first officially reported around 1910. They appeared with clockwork precision, every night at 7:30, then again at 10. Red lights would rise above the mountain's crest, like silent fireworks. They would hover for less than a minute and then wink out of existence. But the story goes back further. According to family tradition, Josiah Fate Wiseman first noticed a strange flash of light around 1854 when camping in what is now known as Wiseman's View. The light appeared at the same place on the horizon at about the same time every single night. In 1913, the U.S. Geological Survey sent D.B. Sterrett to investigate. His conclusion was swift. Locomotive headlights, nothing more. But in 1916, the Great Flood happened. Train service around Brown Mountain ceased for several weeks. The lights continued to appear. In 1922, geologist George Rogers Mansfield conducted the most thorough investigation in the light's history. He spent weeks plotting every light with scientific precision. His final accounting: 47% were automobile headlights, 33% locomotive, 10% stationary electric lights, and 10% brush fires. But modern investigations have deepened the mystery. Appalachian State University installed low-light cameras overlooking Brown Mountain. By 2014, these cameras had recorded over 6,300 viewing hours of data. They traced nearly every sighting to identifiable sources: cars, aircraft, atmospheric phenomena. Nearly every sighting, but not all. Some photographs remain unexplained. Witnesses continue to report lights that move in ways inconsistent with distant vehicles. Lights that sometimes seem to respond to observers. Lights that appear in weather conditions that should prevent atmospheric refraction. Cherokee legend speaks of a great battle fought on the mountain. The lights are said to be the torches of maidens searching for their fallen warriors. The Brown Mountain lights have been observed for at least 170 years. Science has explained some of them, but not all. The lights continue to appear, and the mystery remains unsolved. Case number 13. The Bell Witch. In 1817, something started tormenting the Bell family in Robertson County, Tennessee. By 1820, it had killed the father and become America's most famous ghost story. It started in October of 1817. John Bell was hunting on his property. His dogs suddenly cowered behind him. In his cornfield sat something that looked like a dog with an oversized rabbit head. It was watching him with intelligent eyes. Bell fired his rifle, and the creature vanished. By December, the sounds began. Every night after the family went to bed, something moved through the walls of their farmhouse, scratching and gnawing, like invisible rats chewing through wood. That showed no damage in the morning. In January of 1818, 12-year-old Betsy Bell woke up screaming, with red welts across her face. Something invisible had slapped her hard enough to leave handprints on her cheeks. The attacks escalated. Her hair was pulled, pins driven into her skin, bed covers ripped away in the freezing winter air. The entity saved its worst treatment for John Bell Sr. He began to experience facial paralysis. His tongue would swell until he could not speak. During meals, his throat would constrict without warning, forcing him to struggle for breath. By spring of 1818, the entity found a voice. It spoke like a weak whisper of an old woman. "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed." The voice grew stronger until it could quote scripture with scholarly precision. It recited 2 different sermons being delivered simultaneously, 13 miles apart. It shared intimate details about neighbors' private affairs. The voice called itself Kate. It announced, "I have come to kill old Jack Bell." On December 20th, 1820, John Bell Jr. found his father unconscious with a small vial of dark liquid in the cupboard where no medicine had been placed. They tested a drop on the family cat. The animal died within seconds. The Bell Witch's voice filled the house with triumphant laughter. "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night when he was fast asleep. It fixed him." John Bell Sr. died that afternoon. As mourners gathered for his funeral, the entity sang drinking songs and laughed. Tennessee, as a result of this case, became the only state to officially recognize a death caused by supernatural forces. The Bell Witch case remains unexplained. Whatever tormented that family, whatever killed John Bell, has never been identified. Case number 14. The Moon-Eyed People. The Cherokee had a rule about the little people. The rule was, do not watch. When Cherokee families woke at dawn, sometimes their cornfields would be completely cleared. Stalks gathered in neat bundles, rows weeded with surgical precision. It looked like an entire workforce had labored through the hours of darkness. But there was a price for the midnight help. Absolute secrecy. They come near a house at night, and the people inside hear them talking, but they must not go out. Those who violated the rule paid the price. Hunters who glimpsed at the little people at work found stones hurled at them as they walked home. The Cherokee called them the Little People. European settlers gave them a different name. That captured their most unsettling characteristic. They called them the Moon-Eyed People. In 1797, botanist Benjamin Smith Barton published the first written account. He wrote, "The Cherokee tell us that when they first arrived in the country which they inhabit, they found it possessed by moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime. These wretches they expelled. Physical evidence emerged in unexpected places. In the 1840s, farmer Felix Ashley discovered a 3-foot-tall soapstone statue 60 miles from the Georgia mountains. The sculpture depicted 2 entwined figures with oval heads and large crescent-shaped eyes. exactly matching the descriptions attributed to the Moon-Eyed people. More discoveries followed. In 1882, 3 burial grounds near Sparta, Tennessee, were excavated, containing skeletons of extremely small-statured people, the longest measuring only 19 inches. Several showed adult teeth worn down with age, suggesting full lifespans, despite their diminutive size. No record exists of what happened to these remains. Fort Mountain in northern Georgia bears the most substantial evidence: an 885-foot zigzagging stone wall that archaeologists estimate was built between 500 BC and 500 AD. The wall lacks defensive characteristics. It is too low for protection, has no water source, poor strategic positioning. A historical marker at the site credits Moon-Eyed people with its construction. Who were these small nocturnal people with light-sensitive eyes who could not see in the daytime, who built stone walls and helped Cherokee farmers, but demanded absolute secrecy? The Moon-Eyed people of Appalachia remain a mystery. Case number 15. The Colonial Parkway killings. Between 1986 and 1989, 4 double murders occurred near the Colonial Parkway in Virginia. 8 victims total, often cited as America's most baffling serial murder case. October 12, 1986, Kathleen Thomas, 27, and Rebecca Dowski, 21. Their bodies were found in their car on a secluded part of the parkway. Both had been strangled. September 19th, 1987, David Nobling, 20, and Robin Edwards, 14. Their bodies were found floating in the James River. Both had been shot. April 9th, 1988, Richard Call, 20, and Cassandra Haley, 18. They disappeared after visiting a party. Their car was found abandoned on the parkway, with the keys still in the ignition. Cassandra's body was found a month later. Richard's body was never recovered. September 5th, 1989, Anna Maria Phelps, 18, and Daniel Lauer, 21. They vanished while driving on Interstate 64. Their remains were discovered 2 months later in a wooded area. All 8 victims were young couples. All disappeared from relatively public areas. All were killed with different methods: strangulation, shooting, unknown. The killer, or killers, left almost no evidence, no DNA, no witnesses, no clear motive. Investigators developed numerous suspects over the years, but no one has ever been charged. Some theorize a single serial killer who may have posed as law enforcement. Others believe the murders were committed by different perpetrators. The FBI officially closed their investigation in 2002 without making an arrest. 8 young people, dead. No justice, no answers. The Colonial Parkway killings remain unsolved. Case number 16. the Wampus Cat. Deep in Cherokee mythology and Appalachian folklore lives a creature that is half woman, half feline, an evil spirit that stalks the mountains. The legend tells of a Cherokee woman who wanted to know what the men discussed during their secret hunting meetings. Women were forbidden from these gatherings, but she disguised herself in the skin of a mountain lion and hid in the bushes. When she was discovered, the tribe's medicine man transformed her. As punishment, she became forever trapped between woman and cat, cursed to roam the mountains for eternity. The Wampus Cat is said to stand on two legs, with the body of a large cat, but the face, sometimes beautiful, sometimes hideous, of a woman. Her cry is unmistakable, a scream that sounds like a woman in terrible pain, mixed with the shriek of a mountain lion. Throughout Appalachia, people have reported sightings. In eastern Tennessee, throughout the Blue Ridge Mountains, in the hollows of West Virginia, witnesses describe a large cat-like creature moving with unnatural speed and intelligence. Its eyes glow in the darkness, and when it screams, the sound freezes the blood. Some say the Wampus Cat brings death, that seeing it means someone you know will die. Others claim it steals children or drives people mad with its cry. Is the Wampus Cat a misidentified mountain lion, a bobcat or lynx seen in poor lighting? Or is it something else entirely? The creature continues to be reported throughout Appalachia. The legend persists, and the Wampus Cat has never been captured or explained. Case number 17, the Devil's Tramping Ground. In Chatham County, North Carolina, about 10 miles from the town of Siler City, there is a circular path in the woods where nothing will grow. The circle is approximately 40 feet in diameter. Within the ring, the ground is completely barren. No grass, no weeds, no vegetation of any kind. Outside the circle, the forest grows normally. Trees, bushes, wildflowers. But inside the circle, nothing. Local legend claims that the devil himself walks this circle every night, from dusk until dawn, pacing and planning his evil deeds. His footsteps have worn the ground bare, and his presence poisons the soil. People have tried to camp inside the circle. They report being unable to sleep, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Some claim their belongings were moved during the night or found outside the circle the next morning. Dogs and other animals refuse to enter the circle. They stop at the edge and will not cross, no matter how their owners coax them. Scientists have tested the soil. They found unusually high salt content, which would prevent vegetation from growing. But they cannot explain how the salt got there, or why it remains contained within the perfect circle. Some theorize it was once a Native American meeting ground, where generations of foot traffic compacted the soil. Others suggest it was used for salt lick by animals. But none of these explanations account for the perfect circular shape, or why the phenomenon has persisted for at least 200 years, or why animals refuse to enter. The Devil's Tramping Ground remains unexplained, a perfect circle of barren ground in the middle of a healthy forest, where nothing will grow. Case number 18. The Sheepsquatch. In the mountains of West Virginia, people have reported seeing a creature that defies classification. It stands 7 to 8 feet tall, covered in thick white wool-like hair. But its face is not human. It resembles a sheep, or sometimes a dog. The creature has been called the Sheepsquatch, a white Bigfoot, or the White Thing. Sightings began in the 1990s in Boone, Kanawha, Putnam, and Mason counties, but especially concentrated in the area around TNT, the same abandoned munitions site where the Mothman was sighted. Witnesses describe a massive creature walking on 2 legs, but sometimes dropping to all 4s. Its arms are long, muscular, ending in hands with clawed fingers. In 1994, a former Navy seaman reported an encounter. While camping in Boone County, he heard a snorting sound, turned his flashlight, and saw the creature standing at the tree line. He described it as 7 feet tall, covered in dirty white fur, with a pointed snout like a sheep, and a long hairless tail. Other witnesses have reported the creature killing and eating livestock, or chasing them through the woods. Some say it makes a horrible screaming sound, like nothing they have ever heard. Is the Sheepsquatch a misidentified bear with mange, an albino Bigfoot, or something completely unknown to science? The creature continues to be reported throughout West Virginia, always the same description: massive, white, woolly, with that disturbing sheep-like face. The Sheepsquatch has never been captured, never been photographed clearly, and never been explained. Case number 19. Bigfoot in Appalachia, the Wood Booger. Throughout the Appalachian Mountains, for generations, people have reported seeing large, ape-like creatures living deep in the forests. In Appalachia, these creatures go by many names: Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Wood Booger, the Boojum. But the descriptions remain consistent. A massive primate, standing 7 to 9 feet tall, covered in dark brown or black hair, walking upright on 2 legs, with enormous feet that leave tracks up to 18 inches long. The creature is said to emit a powerful odor, like rotting garbage mixed with sulfur. Witnesses often smell it before they see it. Throughout Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, the reports are remarkably similar. In the Blue Ridge Mountains, hunters have found enormous footprints in the mud, with a stride length that suggests a creature over 7 feet tall. In the Great Smoky Mountains, hikers have heard deep growling sounds coming from the forest, sounds that match no known animal. In remote West Virginia, hollows, Families have reported seeing dark figures watching them from the tree line, then disappearing into the woods. Native American tribes in the region have legends of these creatures, going back thousands of years. They knew of them long before European settlers arrived. Is Bigfoot a surviving species of ancient primate, hiding in the vast wilderness of Appalachia? Or mass delusion shared by thousands of witnesses across centuries? No body has ever been recovered. No clear photograph exists. No definitive physical evidence has been found. But the sightings continue, year after year. Throughout the Appalachian Mountains, the wood booger remains elusive, unexplained, and unsolved. Case number 20, the Judaculla Rock. In Jackson County, North Carolina, there lies a massive soapstone boulder covered in mysterious carvings that have puzzled researchers for centuries. The Judaculla Rock is 20 feet long and covered with over 1,500 petroglyphs, symbols carved deep into the stone. Some carvings appear to be maps. Others seem to depict human figures, animals, or celestial objects. Many are completely unidentifiable, abstract shapes that defy interpretation. Cherokee legend tells of a giant named Tzulkalu, also called Judaculla by European settlers. He was a slant-eyed giant who lived in the mountains, and this rock was his landing place when he jumped down from his home on the peaks. The legend says the carvings are scratches made by Judaculla's 7-fingered hands as he landed. But the carvings are clearly intentional, made by tools with purpose and design. Archaeologists have studied the rock extensively. They believe the carvings may be 3,000 years old, some of the oldest rock art in North America. But they cannot agree on what the symbols mean. Some researchers believe they record celestial events. Others think they are territorial boundary markers, or maps to hunting grounds, or records of treaty agreements. The Cherokee have maintained oral traditions about the rock for generations, but even they are uncertain of its true purpose. Who carved these symbols? What do they mean? Why were they placed on this particular boulder, in this particular location? The Judaculla Rock sits in a field, open to the sky, its secrets carved deep into stone and locked away for 3,000 years. The mystery of its meaning remains unsolved. Case number 21. The disappearance of Derek Luking. March 27th, 2012. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Derek Luking was 24 years old, from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He drove to the park alone. His car was found abandoned at the Jakes Creek trailhead, near Elkmont. On the driver's seat was a note. The note read simply, "Don't try to follow me." Derek's family reported that he had been struggling with personal issues, but nothing that would suggest he planned to disappear. He had made no other preparations, told no one of any plan. Park rangers launched an immediate search, The Jakes Creek Trail is a well-known route leading through the forest to several backcountry campsites. Teams searched for days. They covered the trail, the surrounding wilderness, every possible route Derek might have taken. They found nothing. No camping gear, no clothing, no sign that Derek had ever left the parking lot. What did his note mean? Don't try to follow me. Was it a warning? A goodbye? A cry for help? Did Derek enter the wilderness intending to disappear? Or did something happen to him before he could begin his journey? Derek Luking was never found. His disappearance, like so many others in the Great Smoky Mountains, remains completely unsolved. Case number 22. The ghost voices in the hollers. Throughout Appalachia, in the isolated valleys called hollers, people have reported hearing disembodied human voices that have no source. A holler is a narrow valley between mountain ridges, remote, isolated, often accessible only by a single road. Some hollers are home to only a handful of families who have lived there for generations. In these remote places, people report hearing voices, singing, sometimes hymns, sometimes folk songs. The sound drifts down from the ridges or up from the creek beds. Others hear conversations, multiple people talking, but the words are indistinct, like overhearing a discussion from the next room. Some hear screams, a woman crying out, a child calling for help. But when they search, they find no one. Families have lived in these hollers for centuries, generation after generation. They know every neighbor, every family member, every voice. When they hear these phantom voices, they know they are not from the living. Some believe they are residual hauntings, echoes of people who once lived in these mountains, still going about their daily routines. Others suggest the unique acoustic properties of the narrow valleys, combined with atmospheric conditions, can carry sounds from great distances, creating the illusion of nearby voices. But this does not explain the singing of hymns from churches that closed decades ago, or conversations in accents and dialects from a century past. The ghost voices of the hollers continue to be heard throughout Appalachia, an unexplained phenomenon that has persisted for generations. Case number 23. The Spearfinger. In Cherokee legend, there is a creature more terrifying than any other. Her name is Utlunta, the Spearfinger. She is a shape-shifting witch, made entirely of stone. Her skin cannot be pierced by any weapon, and on her right hand, where her index finger should be, she has a long obsidian blade, sharp as any knife. The Spearfinger hunts children. She can change her appearance at will, often transforming into the shape of a kindly old woman, or even a family member. She approaches children with a warm smile, offering to comb their hair. As they sit before her, relaxed, trusting, she plunges her stone finger into their body and removes their liver, which she eats. The child feels no pain during the attack. The spearfinger's magic makes the wound invisible. The child returns home, but grows weaker and weaker until they die. The legend says she wanders the mountain passes, singing a song. Liver, I eat it. Those who hear her song know she is nearby. Cherokee elders taught children to be wary of strangers, even those who looked like family, to never let anyone touch their bag, to always stay in groups. The Spearfinger legend has persisted for hundreds of years. Some believe she represents very real dangers, strangers who prey on children, illnesses that strike suddenly and without explanation. But deep in the remote areas of the Cherokee homeland, the old people still speak of her, as if she were real, as if she still wanders the mountain passes, looking for her next victim. The Spearfinger, stone-skinned child killer of Appalachian legend, never proven, never disproven, and never forgotten. Case number 24. The Lost Mines of Appalachia. Throughout the Appalachian Mountains, there are countless legends of lost mines filled with gold, silver, and precious gems whose exact locations have never been found. Perhaps the most famous is the Lost State Mine of North Carolina or the Swift Silver Mine of Kentucky. Both supposedly contain unimaginable wealth, but no one has ever located them. The stories follow similar patterns. Spanish explorers, or Cherokee tribes, or Civil War soldiers discovered rich veins of precious metals deep in the mountains. They extracted the wealth, but then something happened. A massacre, a natural disaster, a curse. The miners died, and their secrets died with them. The Swift Silver Mine is said to be somewhere in eastern Kentucky. John Swift, an English explorer, claimed to have found a massive silver deposit in the 1760s. He made multiple trips, extracting silver each time. But on his final expedition, he was blinded and could never find his way back. He left behind journal entries and maps, but the landmarks he described, trees, rock formations, streams, no longer exist or have changed beyond recognition. Treasure hunters have searched for these mines for centuries. They have dug countless holes, explored endless caves, followed countless leads. None have ever found the treasure. Some have died trying, lost in the mountains, or killed by falling rocks. Are these mines real, hidden somewhere in the vast Appalachian wilderness, waiting to be rediscovered? Or are they legends, stories that grew with each retelling? The Appalachian Mountains cover over 200,000 square miles. Much of it remains remote and unexplored. It is possible that somewhere in those endless forests, the lost mines still wait. The treasure of the Appalachian lost mines remains unfound, and the mystery unsolved. Case number 25. The Thin Places. Throughout the Appalachian Mountains, there exist areas where the normal rules of reality seem to break down. Researchers call them thin places. These are locations where the boundary between our world and something else becomes permeable, where people experience phenomena that cannot be explained. Missing time. Hikers enter the forest for what they believe is a 30-minute walk. They emerge hours later with no memory of the intervening time. Spatial distortion. Experienced outdoorsmen who know every trail, every landmark, become hopelessly lost in familiar territory. Compasses spin wildly. GPS units fail. Dead zones of absolute silence, where even insects stop making noise. The forest becomes unnaturally still. The sensation of being watched by unseen eyes, from impossible angles. Scientists have studied these phenomena. The Appalachian Mountains sit on a foundation of ancient rock, 480 million years old. This rock contains massive deposits of magnetite and quartz. When tectonic pressure hits quartz, it generates piezoelectric fields. These fields can create localized zones of electromagnetic anomaly. Dr. Michael Persinger at Laurentian University proved that weak electromagnetic fields can alter human consciousness. Using his God helmet device, he could induce supernatural experiences in 80% of test subjects. They reported sensing mysterious presences, missing time, out-of-body experiences. The same electromagnetic patterns that Persinger created artificially occur naturally in the Appalachian Mountains. Is this the explanation for the disappearances, the strange creatures, the unexplained phenomena? Do the thin places create both the experiences and the legends that attempt to explain them? Or is there something more? Something that science cannot measure? Something ancient that lives in these mountains? The thin places of Appalachia, where reality bends, where people vanish, where impossible things occur. They remain unexplained, and the mystery deepens with every new disappearance, every new sighting. The Appalachian Mountains keep their secrets. As the darkness settles, 25 unsolved mysteries from the ancient Appalachian Mountains. Children who vanished in broad daylight, experienced guides who disappeared from familiar trails, creatures that defy scientific classification, phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality itself. The Appalachian Mountains stretch over 2,000 miles, covering over 200,000 square miles of wilderness. Much of it remains unexplored, remote, inaccessible, unknown. These mountains are older than human memory. They have witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They hold secrets that may never be revealed. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Perhaps the mountains guard their secrets for reasons we cannot comprehend. The cases we have explored tonight: Dennis Martin, Paula Weldon, the Mothman, the Brown Mountain Lights. They remind us that there is still so much we do not understand about our world, about the forces that shape it. As you drift towards sleep, let these mysteries settle into your subconscious. Let the darkness of the mountains wrap around you like a blanket. The Appalachian Mountains will be there when you wake, ancient, patient, waiting, keeping their secrets as they have for 480 million years. Sleep now. Let the unknown carry you into dreams. And when you wake, the mysteries will still be there, unsolved, unexplained, waiting in the shadows of the mountains. This has been Mysteries with MK. Oh, thank you for listening. Sleep well and dream of darkness